Okay, so we have reviewed a lot of 2025's gaming laptops so far this year. And today, what we want to do is put a head-to-head two of the most popular 16-inch gaming laptops that we've actually been using. We have the Alienware 16 versus the Razer Blade 16. Now, these are two completely different classes of 16-inch gaming laptops. The Alienware is a chunky, heavy, dedicated gaming laptop versus the Razer Blade 16, which is a lot more sleek, slim, and probably less powerful. But which one is right for you? Now, before we start actually comparing them, I want to just talk about price. Now, in the UK where I am, the Razer Blade is actually coming out much cheaper than the Alienware. For like, say 5080 on both of these models, there's about £400 difference between the two. But if you're in the United States, it's a totally different situation. And the Razer Blades are, for some reason, I don't know if it's tariff related, are a lot more expensive in the United States than Alienware. So again, depending on your region, prices may vary. So then let's take a quick look at these laptops. And they are both 16 inches, but you can see they are very different. Specs-wise is different as well. The Alienware have gone for the traditional Intel route with the 275HX CPU. They've all got the 5070 Ti, 5080 or 5090 on the Alienware range. Whereas Razer have actually gone the different route and gone for the Ryzen processors. We've had in both the HX370 and the AI365 CPUs. The 370 has two more cores, but I've found realistically there's not a massive amount of difference between the two. But it does completely make sense. The Razer Blade 16 being much more compact, using the Ryzen with its more efficient and less power use processor at the expense of a little performance, in this chassis is a great choice, whereas a thicker, denser Alienware 16 chassis with that more powerful, but also using a lot more wattage Intel CPU is definitely the right way to go. But obviously, which is better? We'll look at that in the performance section. So before we do that, let's look around these actual laptops themselves. And straight away, you can see that the Alienware 16 is a much bigger laptop. Not only is it a lot thicker, but because we've got this big vent grille at the back, that sticks out much further than the Blade 16. And obviously as well, the Alienware 16 is just also more wide than the Blade 16, showing you just how compact this Blade 16 is. If I just put them up to the top cam, hopefully we'll be able to see just how thick the Blade, or thin, the Blade 16 is compared to that Alienware 16. Now, both of these are fingerprint magnets, I'm going to warn you now, so I'm going to be constantly cleaning these laptops. One day they will invent a good-looking laptop that does not need cleaning every 5 minutes. But until that day, I have my trusty cloth. So, size aside, we know that the Blade 16 is going to be bigger. Let's just quickly check out weight and just see how much the difference in weight is between these two laptops. So we're going to start with the Alienware 16. That comes in just under 3.3 kilograms, so quite a hefty weight. And then my Blade 16, 2.1 kilograms. So you can see there's a massive difference in weight. So if you be carting these laptops around every day, just chuck them in and out of bags, using them out and about, you can see why the Blade 16 might be a better choice for somebody. But if you're going to be sitting just in your office gaming solidly, then maybe the actual more dense Alienware 16. What about ports? The Blade 16 has all the ports on the side. If we look on the left side of the laptop, we've got the Razer power jack, two USB-A, a USB 4, and a headset jack. And on the right side, we've got HDMI 2.1, a Kensington lock, another USB-A, another USB 4, and a full-size SD card slot. So a good range of ports, all on the side, nothing on the back, and only a status light on the front. Now the Alienware, nothing on the right side. On the left side, we get a full-size SD card slot and a headset jack. All the other ports are at the rear. And we've got the power jack, HDMI 2.1, two Thunderbolt 5, I know a lot of people are going to want those, and three USB-As. So for the ports, I'm going to have to give the quality of ports to the Alienware 16, but I personally prefer the side placements on the Razer Blade 16, because if you're plugging things in that regularly, it's much easier to do on this laptop. But this one, if it's a desktop replacement, will look cleaner with everything coming out from the rear. So again, this is going to be personal preference, but because I'm always using my laptop on the go, I like having those ports on the side. Now, when it comes to the actual lighting on these laptops, the Razer Blade is much more muted. We have a lit Razer logo on the screen, which can be turned off. And then as we open it up, we do have the lit keyboard. and that's pretty much it. So probably look better in an office environment, especially once you cover up that Razer logo. It's much more, well, definitely muted. Now the Alienware 16, on the other hand, we have a lit alien head, as always with Alienware laptops. And then if we look at the back here, we've got that beautiful subtle light along the grille. I've got that set to the rainbow waves. You can see that the colours are changing constantly, and that can be set to your liking in the Alienware Command Center. We also get the lit keyboard. And again, this is set to the rainbow waves. It's per key lighting, just like on the Razer Blades. Okay, so fire both the laptops up so you can see the keyboards. So I've got the rainbow waves set up on both. They are both per key lighting, controlled by their relative softwares. But the Alienware does have the added advantage, or disadvantage if you don't like RGB, the lit touchpad. And again, with the rainbow wave set up, I think that looks absolutely fantastic. Now, whilst we've got them both open, let's talk about the actual palm rests, because as you can see, we have the same liquid teal finish on the palm rest of the Alienware 16, and we just have the matte black milled aluminium on the actual Razer Blade 16. And as we look to the touchpads, despite that one being lit and being glass and tracking well and being good, I find it too small, whereas the trackpad on the actual Razer Blade 16 is absolutely huge and is a much better trackpad in day-to-day use, in my personal opinion. I would actually verge on saying it's actually just slightly too big, but I would take this trackpad over the Alienware 16 if you use the trackpad every day. When it comes to actual typing on the keyboards, it's a no-brainer. The win has to go to the Alienware. This is the dome switch version, and that is fantastic. And you even have an option to upgrade to the Cherry MX red mechanical keyboard, which again is an absolutely stunning keyboard and great typing experience. And although Razer have increased the key travel a little bit this year, the keys still feel a little bit dead in comparison to the Alienware 16. With regards to the layout, as you can see, the layout is very similar. They both got a centered keyboard with some commands on the outer edge. I like the fact that on the Alienware you have the mute mic and mute speakers and the volume control. On the Razer Blade, you've got the profile switcher, which is very handy, and a mute mic, but I would have liked some dedicated volume controls, but you know, it is what it is. We do have some up here. Something the Razer Blade does have though, which I really like, if you hold that function key down, it lights up your function keys. So you see all the functions and all the command keys are now lit white, so you can see very quickly which keys do things for you. And if you hold the shift key down, all your secondary functions light up. I think that's a really nice touch. And if you set your function keys or your multimedia keys as the primary on the top, the relevant ones light up so you know where you are. You don't get that option on the actual Alienware. Okay, so with the touchpad and the keyboard covered, either side you can see we've got the speaker grills. This is what the speakers sound like. Speaker test of the Alienware 16 versus the Razer Blade 16. We're going to be starting at 50% volume and the Alienware 16 is going first. Now 80%. Now finally 100%. So there we go, side-by-side speaker test. The Alienware is a different league with regards to how loud those speakers get. I have to be honest, I'm not overly impressed with either really. I don't know, maybe the sound quality is slightly better on at an even level on the actual Razer Blade, but obviously it is much, much quieter. Then up above the keyboards, on the Razer Blade you've got literally nothing, whereas on the Alienware you've got a lot of air intake, and you can see the RGBs for the fans literally glowing through there as well, which is another little area, is the glass strip, which is at the bottom here. And that is the nice glass panel, so you can see through to the internals and the RGB lights on those actual fans. So moving up to the screens, I think most people are going to agree the instant win goes to the Razer Blade here. It has an OLED panel. It's QHD+, so 1600p, 240 Hz. The colours pop, the blacks are black, it's absolutely stunning. That said, we have an IPS panel in the actual Alienware 16. It gets up to 500 nits, so very slightly brighter than the Razer Blade, just over 400 nits. It's got an anti-glare coating, and although it's IPS, it's a good IPS panel, also 240 Hz and 1600p. Now, although I prefer the images on the Razer Blade's OLED panel, when I'm actually gaming in a bright environment, this is actually more comfortable because it's anti-glare. And I know this can be controversial, but that is actually sometimes in a bright environment a better option, especially with the 500 nits of brightness and that anti-glare coating. Now, apparently this Razer has an anti-glare coating, but you can see how glossy this is. If I'm in my bright sunroom, this is almost unusable. But if I'm in a dark, controlled lighting environment, it is stunning. Now, up above the actual screens, we have the webcams. The Razer Blade webcam looks like this. This is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the new 2025 Razer Blade 16. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the quality of the picture and the sound. And the Alienware has a 4K webcam and it looks like this. So this is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the new Alienware 16 Area51. This is the upgraded 4K webcam. Let me know what you think of the quality of this one down in the comment section down below. Does this really feel like a 4K webcam? Love to know your thoughts. And then both of these actual laptops have Windows Hello facial recognition included for speedy logins of Windows, which I absolutely love. Right, so now let's talk about the internals. Okay, so let's open up both of these laptops and take a look inside. Now, both of these 16-inch laptops are pretty easy to open, just a few screws on the base plates, but whereas the Blade lifts straight away, on the Alienware you do need to use a pry tool to unpop all the clips around the edges. Now, once inside, you can see some serious differences. Starting with the battery, and the Blade gets a 90 watt-hour to the Alienware's 96 watt-hour. But don't let the size of the battery fool you, there's a big difference in battery run times, which I will cover later. Next up is the RAM. And the Razer Blade has 32GB of soldered 8000 megatransfer RAM against the 32GB of socketed 6400 on the Area51. So although the Blade's RAM is slightly faster, I would take the upgradable 6400 slots on the Alienware every time. I just hate soldered on RAM. Moving on to the SSDs, and the Razer Blade has 2 Gen 4 M.2 slots, whereas the Alienware has 3 M.2s. The win definitely has to go to the Alienware here, because it also has a Gen 5 drive and a 2TB Gen 5 populated out of the gate. The one positive for the Blade 16 though, is that there's actually room for double-sided SSDs in this laptop, meaning you could theoretically use 2 times 8TB drives if you were feeling rich. With regards to the Wi-Fi, both have Wi-Fi 7, but the Razer Blade is socketed, so that gets the nod here. But I'd rather have soldered on Wi-Fi card than soldered on RAM, so ultimately, for upgradability, the Alienware is the clear winner. Razer, as usual, has gone for the 2-fan and large vapor chamber option here. And although effective, Razer have made this blade so thin that there's only so much that it can do, which we're going to cover in the performance section. The fans and the vapor chamber are easily accessible though, meaning that replays are pretty easy. The Alienware, on the other hand, offers a full fan and vapor chamber in a thicker body. It also has side and rear exhaust vents, meaning it can expel the hot air easier than the Blade. But the one downside, as usual, is that Dell have used an inverted motherboard, meaning cleaning and replacing this laptop is going to be difficult. So with all of that out of the way, let's put these laptops back together and start looking at performance. Now these are two very different classes of laptops, the Alienware being a more traditional larger gaming laptop variant, and the Blade being a very slim content creating and gaming variant laptop. The Blade is clearly tuned more for portability and day-to-day use, rather than the Alienware, which focuses on pure performance. Now this shows with the choice of CPUs used in each laptop. Razer have chosen the Ryzen HX 370, a 12-core, 24-thread efficient CPU from AMD, whereas the Alienware have used Intel's newer Core Ultra 9 275HX, a 24-core, 24-thread CPU that is more powerful, but needs much more powerful to run it at its max clocks. Starting off looking at the Geekbench scores for these laptops, and the single core was almost the same between these two models, meaning that apps loading and day-to-day Windows use will feel equally snappy on either of these machines. But looking at the multi-core, and the Alienware pulls ahead here. And that lead pulls even further when we move to a 10-minute torture test of Cinebench R23, where the Alienware scored 34.7 thousand against Razer's 23.4. That's a massive difference for anyone utilising the CPU for work as well as for gaming. Looking at Cinebench R24 and the max performance scores of the Blade is less than the quiet profile on the Area51. You really are sacrificing a lot of performance here for this slim chassis. Moving over to gaming, and we can't compare this fairly as we have a 5090 on the Blade and a 5080 on the Area51, but we can look at thermals, watts and noise. Now I will show you a quick time spy comparison because the capped 5090 scores only marginally better than the 175 watt 5080 in the Alienware. Being a slim laptop, thermals are always going to be a challenge, and this shows here by the max wattage Razer have allocated to that GPU is 160 watts, and I find it only often sits at about 150 watts. The Alienware, on the other hand, has no problem hitting its 170 watt power limit, and this is why the 5080 is so close to the Razer Blade's 5090. The Alienware also has a much better crossload of about 260 watts in comparison to the Razer Blade's 180 watts. Internal temps were very similar though, with both GPUs hitting up to about 80C, though the Alienware CPU often did get hotter temps with spikes at over 90 due to the massive power budget that it was allowed. External temperatures on both these laptops were comfortable, which is good news, but I did find the side vents of the Alienware spat out a lot of hot air during gaming, meaning a scorched mouse hand. Now with all the air coming out the back of the Blade, this was not an issue here. Moving over to the fan noise, and this is an easy win for the Alienware. You get more profile options on the Alienware than the Razer Blade, and they're actually quieter through each of the profiles. Now the Razer Blade only had 3 profiles, silent was 44 decibels, and the other 2 were both hitting 53 decibels, whereas Alienware ranged from 39 right up to 60, depending on the performance options. And considering how much more wattage you are pushing through the Alienware, this makes sense and is a good way to tweak your laptop. And on to the battery life, and this was an easy win for the Razer Blade 16. The Alienware only scored 5 hours and 37 minutes against that Razer Blade 16 10 hours and 11 minutes in our usual YouTube streaming test over Wi-Fi at 200 nits of brightness, 60 Hz with no lighting on. So again, with the type of class of this machine, with the more portable one, it makes sense that you have more battery life. So this is making it very easy to decide whether you want that portability and battery life of the Razer Blade or the pure power and bulkiness of the Alienware. Now on to power delivery, and both of these laptops offer 100 watt PD, but Razer's implementation over power delivery is so much better than the Alienware. You could even game on the Razer Blade 16 with a 100 watt PD charger, whereas the Alienware was pretty much a stutter fest. So with regards to power delivery, an easy win for the Blade 16. Okay, so there we have it. That's the Razer Blade 16 versus the Alienware 16. You can see there are 2 very different classes of machines. And it's almost unfair to put them head to head, because this one is definitely a slim and light portable laptop that can game. This is a gaming laptop that you can move around. Now I have to be honest, I love both of these laptops. They are both really lovely laptops, but if I had to choose one, I would take the Razer Blade 16. But for this sort of size laptop, I want to be taking it places. I want that battery life, that beautiful screen, and I want to be just literally using it on the go. It is a great portable laptop that can game, and I absolutely love that. And it's also great for work. Now on the Alienware 16, if you're just a person that is going from desk to desk, you want that pure performance, that pure gaming power and performance, this is a good 16-inch option. There are also other 16 options that may be a better choice, such as the Legion Pro 7i. And I personally, if I was going to go for a dedicated gaming laptop that I wasn't looking at portability, I think I would probably push up to the 18-inch for that extra screen real estate and those better temps. That's just me. But as always, I'd love to know what you guys think. Which of these 2 laptops would you choose? Or none at all? Let me know in the comment section down below and I will get back to you. And as always, thank you for watching.